I almost quit at month 9. Not because the market crashed, because it didn't do anything. I remember opening my brokerage app on a Tuesday night, expecting to feel something. After 11 months of skipping the lunch order, of turning down 2 trips, of watching the same 3 streaming apps, instead of adding a 4th, the number was a few $100s higher than I expected. I closed the laptop. I felt nothing. Not proud. Not close. Just tired. And quietly convinced that whatever I was doing wasn't working. If you haven't started yet, that sentence might sound like a reason to wait. It isn't. The version of this story where you never start is worse than the version where you start and almost quit. Because at least in this one, something was happening the whole time, even when it didn't feel like it. Here's the thing nobody tells you about that moment. It has nothing to do with the actual dollar amount on the screen. You could show me the math proving I was exactly on schedule, and it wouldn't have touched the feeling. That gap between what the math says is true and what your gut is willing to believe is what almost got me. And for a lot of people, in my experience, that gap matters more than the market or their income ever does. Call it belief, or the lack of it. I didn't think much about it again, until a coworker of mine, Erin, told me she'd stopped her automatic transfers. Quietly. No dramatic story. No emergency. She just logged in one Sunday, saw a balance that looked basically the same as 3 months earlier, and turned it off. "I'll start again when it's actually doing something," she said. That sentence stuck with me because it wasn't lazy or careless. It was completely reasonable. If something isn't producing evidence, it's working. A smart person stops. That's not a character flaw. That's how you're supposed to think. Which is exactly the problem. And it's worth saying plainly that if her plan included any employer match, pausing didn't just cost her growth. It walked away from money her employer was ready to add on top of her own. An employer match is one of the only guaranteed immediate returns available in investing. Turning it off isn't a neutral pause. It's a real and quantifiable cost. So I went looking for what was actually happening in her account, and in mine. During those invisible months, here's what I found. Start with the part that actually explains why those months feel like nothing. A 10% return on $5,000 is $500. You could earn that working 1 extra weekend, so it barely registers. The same 10% on $100,000 is $10,000, a number that starts to feel like a second income. On $1 million, it's $100,000, more than most salaries. The rate never changes. Only the base does. Which means the first stretch isn't slow because something's wrong. It's slow because you're early on a curve. That looks completely flat. Right up until, mathematically, it can't anymore. Fidelity tracks average retirement balances across generations. And the pattern is fairly consistent. Millennials, roughly late 20s through early 40s, carry average 401k and IRA balances in the neighborhood of $80,000 to $90,000 combined, while Gen X, a decade or more further into their careers, averages well over double that. The climb from the first bracket to the next happens gradually, over roughly 15 to 20 years of continuous saving, not overnight. One honest caveat: these are averages. and averages get pulled upward by a relatively small number of large accounts. The median saver, the person exactly in the middle, typically has quite a bit less than the average at any given age. So don't panic if you're below the average number. Panic less, and just watch your own line move. Picture that climb as a flat, grinding stretch for years, built largely out of paycheck contributions, with compounding doing comparatively little heavy lifting early on, followed by a curve that finally starts to bend upward once the balance itself gets big enough for growth to matter. Erin wasn't 3 months from nothing. She was in the flattest, quietest stretch of a curve. That tends to look like this for almost everyone. Now here's the part that should actually worry you. The version of you about to quit this month can look, on paper, identical to the version of you who was 6 weeks from the number finally moving. There's often no obvious warning sign either way. The despair and the breakthrough can sit right next to each other, hard to tell apart in the moment, which is exactly why the input, not the balance, is the thing worth watching. To be clear, this isn't a guarantee. Markets can also stay flat or decline for extended stretches, regardless of how disciplined your contributions are. Staying invested improves your odds over long-time horizons. It doesn't remove the risk. Why does the brain give up right there, at the flattest part of the line? There's research on this, and it comes out of consumer psychology, not investing. A 2006 study by Kivets, Urminsky, and Jung, published in the Journal of Marketing Research, looked at a coffee shop loyalty program. Some customers got a card that needed 10 more purchases starting from 0, while others got a card that already had a couple of stamps filled in, but needed the same 10 purchases to finish. The group with visible Head Start progress finished faster, even though the actual number of purchases required was identical. Visible progress, even artificially front-loaded progress, sped people up. The flip side, consistent with the broader theory this work builds on, is that when there's no visible marker at all, motivation tends to fade, even while real progress continues underneath. For the first $100,000, there's often nothing to see, for a very long time. Now, credit where it's due. Dave Ramsey built an entire method, the debt snowball, on exactly this insight. Pay off your smallest balance first, not the highest interest one, specifically to manufacture a visible win fast. For many people, it works well as a motivation tool, even though it can cost slightly more in interest than tackling the highest rate debt first. But it's designed for debt, where you can choose an order. That hands you a fake finish line every few weeks. Investing doesn't let you engineer the sequence the same way. There's no smallest balance to knock out first. There's just the line, flat, for a long time, whether you manufacture a shortcut or not. So what do you actually do with the invisible years? Stop using the account balance as your primary evidence of progress. It's structurally one of the weakest short-term proof points you could use right now. It's built to look flat for a long time, regardless of whether you're doing everything right. And it also moves with market conditions you don't control. Instead, track the input, your savings rate, your contribution streak, whether the automatic transfer happened this month or didn't. That number moves every single time you act, immediately, with zero delay. Apps like YNAB, or even a basic recurring transfer log in your bank app, will show you that number honestly, where your portfolio balance won't. And here's what's actually waiting on the other side of that flat stretch, because it's worth naming plainly. Once the balance gets big enough, the same behavior that felt invisible starts producing numbers you can't ignore. The 10,000, the 100,000. Growth that starts outpacing what you're even contributing. But it's not just the dollars. It's what the dollars let you do. A job offer that pays more but isn't guaranteed stops being a risk you can't afford. It becomes a risk you can afford to try. A friend's business idea. A chance to buy something undervalued. A leap you'd have had to say no to. Those stop being hypotheticals. Money saved isn't just a number sitting there. It's the difference between having to say no to an opportunity and having the option to say yes. That's the part that doesn't show up on the balance screen in month 9. But it's exactly what you're building toward. I still have that same login screen, months after that Tuesday night. I opened it again, not expecting anything. And the number had actually moved, helped along by continued contributions, and a period of positive market returns. That's worth naming honestly. The jump wasn't guaranteed by persistence alone. Markets can just as easily go flat or down for a long stretch. What persistence guarantees is that you're positioned to benefit when growth does show up, not that it shows up on any particular schedule. So, it's worth asking, honestly and just for yourself, are you actually behind on contributions? Or are you current on contributions and just starving for a signal your balance isn't built to give you yet? Those are two different problems, and only one of them means you should stop. This isn't personalized financial advice. Everyone's plan, employer match, risk tolerance, and timeline are different. So, it's worth talking to a licensed financial advisor before making changes to your own account. But if you're in the second category, the fix probably isn't a different investment. It's a better proof metric. Pull up your contribution history this week and look at the number that's actually been moving the whole time. Nothing for it. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had a month like that, where you did everything right and felt nothing for it. Tell me in the comments. I want to know how long your flattest stretch lasted, because I think most people quit right before it ended, not because they were far from the finish line, but because they couldn't see how close they actually were. If this helped you see your own invisible months differently, hit like so more people going through the same thing can find it. And subscribe if you want the next one, because the psychology behind the next $100,000 is a completely different problem. And it's not the one you're expecting.